Nestled in the heart of Rome, the Vatican stands as one of the most iconic symbols of history, faith, and human ambition. Its golden domes, ornate chapels, and centuries-old art are familiar to millions. Yet beneath the visible splendor lies a hidden world that few have truly glimpsed. This is a realm of secrecy, carefully preserved archives, and whispered stories that hint at knowledge the Church has long kept from public view. From the outside, the Vatican appears serene and timeless, but within its walls, decisions are made, knowledge is guarded, and mysteries are carefully curated. For centuries, the Vatican has been both a spiritual center and a repository of history. Popes, cardinals, and scholars have passed through its halls, leaving behind manuscripts, letters, and records that document events and ideas, some of which the world was never meant to see. These hidden stories blur the line between history and legend, revealing a complex interplay of power, faith, and human ambition. Every corner of the Vatican, from shadowed corridors to sunlit chapels, holds echoes of debates, controversies, and secrets that continue to fascinate historians and the curious alike. In exploring the Vatican's hidden truths, we enter a world where light meets shadow, where known history intertwines with mystery, and where each revelation raises new questions. What knowledge has been carefully preserved, and why was it hidden? What decisions shaped the Church and the world without public awareness? In the chapters ahead, we will journey deeper into this extraordinary institution, uncovering forbidden texts, hidden decisions, and secrets that the Vatican has safeguarded for centuries, inviting us to contemplate the tension between revelation and concealment. Beyond the sunlit splendor of St. Peter's Square and the ornate corridors of the Vatican lies a realm seldom glimpsed by outsiders. A realm where time itself seems to pause, and where knowledge stretches across centuries like a river, flowing silently beneath a frozen surface. This is the Vatican's secret archives, a sanctuary of manuscripts, letters, and documents that has, for centuries, held within its walls the intimate and often concealed stories of the Church, of nations, and of the countless lives that intersected with its history. It is a place that evokes both awe and quiet trepidation, a library not merely of books, but of secrets, preserved with meticulous care and guarded with unwavering vigilance. The name itself is deceptive. Secret suggests scandal or conspiracy, yet the archives are not merely repositories of illicit knowledge. They are guardians of history, a careful curation of the Church's legacy, both light and shadow. Here, the mundane intertwines with the extraordinary. Papal correspondence that shaped empires rests beside private notes detailing doctrinal disputes. Maps charting the spread of faith sit next to censored writings that once challenged the Church's authority. Each shelf, each meticulously labeled box, represents the painstaking efforts of centuries to preserve memory, to maintain continuity, and, inevitably, to exercise discretion over what the world may see. The contrast between the archive's forbidding exterior and the treasures within is striking. Visitors allowed entry. Rare scholars, historians, or church officials often describe the air as still, almost reverential, as if every document, every scroll, holds its own quiet voice. The corridors are long and narrow, lined with rows of wooden cabinets polished to a muted gleam. Light filters through small, high windows, enough to reveal the contours of leather-bound manuscripts, but not enough to illuminate fully the depth of knowledge contained. The silence is profound, punctuated only by the faint rustle of turning pages or the soft whisper of a cautious footstep. It is a silence that invites reflection, yet hints at the weight of secrets too heavy to speak aloud. Among the archive's most compelling treasures are the letters of popes to monarchs, letters that reveal the delicate and sometimes precarious balance between spiritual guidance and political influence. These correspondences expose decisions made behind closed doors, moments when the Church intervened subtly in wars, treaties, or dynastic disputes. To the casual observer, the Vatican is a spiritual beacon, Yet the archives reveal the careful orchestration of power, executed with discretion and patience. In these documents, history's grand narratives are accompanied by the quiet, almost imperceptible human anxieties and ambitions that shaped them. There are also texts that challenge our understanding of the Church's relationship with knowledge and the world. Manuscripts once deemed heretical, letters smuggled in secret, and codices written in forgotten languages all lie here, preserved and protected. They are reminders that knowledge is both fragile and formidable. A single letter, a single record, can alter perception, reshaping what we understand about faith, politics, and history itself. The archives are therefore both a sanctuary and a vault, a place where wisdom and fear coexist in a careful, deliberate balance. Access is tightly restricted, and for good reason. The Vatican's secret archives are not simply a collection of curiosities. They are living memory, preserved against the erosions of time, neglect, and human error. Scholars seeking entry must submit detailed proposals, undergo scrutiny, and often wait years before a single visit is permitted. Even then, their access is limited to specific collections under the watchful eyes of archivists who have dedicated their lives to preserving these documents. Every movement is measured, every interaction with the manuscripts deliberate. It is as though the archives themselves are conscious of their own fragility, of the immense responsibility borne by those allowed to witness their contents. The mystique of the archives is compounded by the many rumors and whispered stories that have emerged over centuries. Some suggest the existence of documents that detail secret alliances with governments or hidden knowledge of events that contradict accepted history. Others speak of manuscripts that contain arcane knowledge, prophecies, or records of encounters that blur the line between faith and the unknown. Though much of this remains speculative, the very possibility captivates the imagination, inviting us to wonder about the dimensions of history that lie just beyond reach. The archives are, in essence, a threshold, a quiet invitation to explore what is known while feeling the pull of the unknowable. The architecture of the archives itself seems to reflect this duality of concealment and revelation. Narrow hallways twist and turn, leading to rooms stacked with endless rows of cabinets. Each drawer, each shelf, is a portal into another time, another story, another perspective. The labels, often written in Latin, denote centuries of meticulous cataloging, yet the language itself adds a layer of distance, separating the modern visitor from the immediacy of the past. It is a deliberate, almost poetic barrier, reminding us that history is not only to be observed, but to be interpreted, questioned, and approached with humility. One cannot speak of the Vatican's secret archives without mentioning the paradox of visibility. To the outside world, the archives are enigmatic, their contents imagined more than known. Yet within these walls, the past is vividly present. Every document carries with it a human story. Letters written with trembling hands, reports crafted in haste, decrees issued with solemn conviction. Here, the tangible and the intangible coexist. The ink on parchment, the ideas it conveys, and the unspoken weight of decisions that shaped the course of history. The archives are at once silent and eloquent, inviting those who enter to listen closely, to read between the lines, and to sense the presence of centuries past. As we linger in the thought of these guarded halls, it becomes clear that the Vatican's secrets are not merely about concealment, but about preservation. Knowledge, once lost, cannot easily be reclaimed. The archives, in their silent rigor, ensure that memory endures, that lessons, both cautionary and enlightening, remain accessible to those patient enough to seek them. The contrast between the public perception of the Vatican as a luminous center of faith and the hidden, almost hermetic world of the archives underscores a truth about secrecy itself. It is not simply about hiding, but about protecting, curating, and sometimes restraining until the world is ready to understand. In this quiet, dimly lit sanctuary, the air is thick with possibility. It is a place where the known and unknown intertwine, where curiosity is tempered by reverence, and where every discovery carries the weight of centuries. The Vatican secret archives are more than just a collection of documents. They're the heartbeat of history, pulsing quietly behind locked doors. And as we prepare to delve deeper into the Vatican's hidden past, into the stories that have shaped its power and mystique, we do so with the understanding that we are stepping into a world where every fact carries a shadow, and every secret is a story waiting to be told. The Vatican's influence stretches far beyond its stone walls and gilded halls, reaching into the currents of history in ways that are both subtle and profound. To the casual observer, the Pope is a spiritual guide, a figure of serene authority, enveloped in robes of white and gold, moving through St. Peter's Square beneath the gaze of millions. Yet behind this serene public persona lies a history of power, negotiation, and discreet intervention, an intricate dance that has shaped not only the fate of the Church but of nations themselves. It is within this interplay between visibility and discretion that the Vatican's most enduring mysteries reside, hidden just beneath the surface of its illuminated exterior. From the earliest centuries of the papacy, popes have navigated a world of political intrigue, alliances, and rivalry. The papal chair has not always been a seat of unchallenged spiritual authority. It has often been a pivot point for worldly influence. Kings, emperors, and political factions have sought its favor, understanding that the Pope's blessing could legitimize a ruler's claim, and conversely, that papal opposition could unravel entire dynasties. The archives and annals, glimpsed only in fragmentary fashion, reveal a pattern of negotiation, diplomacy, and, at times, clandestine maneuvering that challenges the simple notion of the Pope as purely a religious figure. Here, faith and power are not opposed but intertwined, coexisting in a delicate equilibrium where secrecy is a tool as essential as prayer. Consider, for example, the historical influence the papacy wielded over European monarchies. Letters and records preserved in the Vatican reveal not only spiritual guidance, but directives, interventions, and even subtle threats designed to shape the course of rulers' decisions. A king's choice to go to war, a queen's succession plans, or the outcome of treaties were often subject to papal awareness or intervention. This influence, rarely spoken of in popular narratives, is a quiet testament to the Vatican's enduring ability to shape events without overt visibility. It is a reminder that power, when exercised from the shadows, can be more effective and perhaps more enduring than power displayed openly. The contrast between the Pope's public life and private decisions is striking. Publicly, ceremonies of light, music, and ritual convey an image of unity, serenity, and moral clarity. The faithful gather, prayers echoing across St. Peter's Square, the Pope's words broadcast to millions worldwide. Privately, however, decisions are deliberated in chambers and councils, where advisors weigh political consequences, moral implications, and historical precedent. It is a delicate balancing act. Each choice must respect the spiritual authority of the papacy while navigating the complex web of earthly concerns. In this duality, the Vatican's history of power takes on a more nuanced, almost hypnotic quality, inviting contemplation rather than sensationalism. Behind this curtain of discretion lies an intricate network of advisors, secretaries, and envoys. Cardinals and Vatican officials have, for centuries, acted as intermediaries between the Pope and the broader world, crafting messages that are carefully calibrated, guiding decisions without ever drawing attention to the mechanisms behind them. The Vatican's internal communications, often documented in the archives, show a level of strategy and foresight that mirrors the workings of great political institutions. Yet all is conducted in the shadow of faith, framed by a profound awareness of moral responsibility. It is this blend of spiritual purpose and pragmatic discretion that has allowed the papacy to endure, even in eras of profound upheaval, scandal, and external threat. The historical records are filled with moments that reveal the Vatican's subtle mastery of influence. The shifting allegiances of European states, the negotiation of peace treaties, even the quiet orchestration of marriages that bound dynasties together, all bear the fingerprints of the papacy, often unseen and unacknowledged. It is here, in the quiet corridors of power, that the Vatican's most intriguing mysteries emerge. Decisions that might appear trivial on the surface, preserved in small, inconspicuous documents, reveal themselves as turning points in the history of nations. The juxtaposition of public ceremony and hidden strategy creates a compelling tension, inviting us to wonder about the true extent of the Vatican's historical reach. The intrigue extends even into the shadows of scandal. Popes and high-ranking officials have faced periods of corruption, moral failing, and political manipulation, all recorded meticulously in the annals and archives. These accounts, though rarely publicized, reveal a human side to the institution, flawed, ambitious, and deeply human. Yet it is precisely this combination of human imperfection and careful preservation that deepens the Vatican's mystique. The Church, while maintaining an image of sacred continuity, has always operated in a world of practical realities, and its ability to navigate both realms, public faith and private influence, is part of what makes its history endlessly compelling. In tracing the papacy's hidden hand, one begins to notice patterns: a preference for discretion over spectacle, strategy over impulse, and patience over immediate gratification. These qualities, often invisible to the casual observer, are what have allowed the Vatican to endure centuries of war, revolution, and social upheaval. Here, power is not flaunted. It is exercised quietly, measured in correspondence, counsel, and the careful preservation of information. This hidden dimension of influence, the quiet whisper behind the ceremonial grandeur, is central to understanding the Vatican's historical and contemporary role in the world. Yet even as we explore these corridors of influence, we are reminded of the human element that underlies all these decisions. Popes, advisors, and envoys were people first, subject to the same fears, desires, and doubts as anyone else. Letters reveal hesitation, notes hint at uncertainty, and archived discussions show debates that were far from purely doctrinal. The contrast between their human vulnerability and the enduring weight of the institution they serve is profound. It is a duality that continues to captivate historians and lay observers alike, a center of faith guided by individuals navigating a complex, often unforgiving world. The Vatican's quiet mastery of power is not limited to the past. Even today, decisions made within its walls ripple outward, touching international relations, humanitarian efforts, and global dialogue. The strategies developed over centuries, preserved in archives, and refined over generations, continue to inform its approach to contemporary challenges. Here again, the interplay of transparency and discretion remains central, demonstrating that the lessons of history are not static. They are living guides for action, reflection, and influence. As we move forward into the Vatican's more mysterious and controversial aspects, the forbidden knowledge, the hidden histories, the facts never publicly acknowledged, it is crucial to carry this understanding with us. The papacy is not merely a figurehead or symbol. It is a living institution, shaped by centuries of experience, human complexity, and strategic discretion. The whispers of power behind the curtain are a reminder that history is rarely as simple as it seems, and that every public display is often accompanied by layers of unseen influence, carefully preserved and patiently executed. In contemplating these hidden threads of influence, we begin to see the Vatican not simply as a place of spiritual reverence, but as a living nexus of history, power, and secrecy. Its mysteries are not designed solely to tantalize curiosity. They're the natural result of an institution balancing faith, human ambition, and the weight of centuries. It is within this tension between light and shadow, seen and unseen, known and unknown, that the Vatican story unfolds most compellingly, guiding us toward the forbidden facts that lie hidden in its depths. Beneath the familiar beauty of the Vatican lies a world of rituals, symbols, and traditions carefully preserved and meticulously practiced over centuries. These are not merely decorative or ceremonial. They're coded expressions of authority, continuity, and power. Visitors wandering through St. Peter's Basilica or the Sistine Chapel often notice the intricate patterns, the repeated gestures, and the recurring motifs, yet few pause to consider the layers of meaning woven into every detail. Each symbol, each movement, is a deliberate echo of history, a quiet assertion of the continuity and sanctity of the institution, designed both to inspire the faithful and to safeguard secrets. Many of the Vatican's most enigmatic rituals take place behind closed doors. Within certain chambers, ceremonies unfold in quiet solemnity, often shielded from the gaze of the public. These rituals, passed down from pope to pope, are imbued with centuries of tradition and imbibe a deep sense of authority and purpose. They are exercises in both faith and discipline, blending spiritual intention with a careful orchestration of gesture, word, and timing. Observers who have glimpsed even fragments describe an atmosphere of profound reverence, a hush that seems almost sacred, as if the air itself carries the memory of generations long gone. Symbolism is central to these hidden practices. From the positioning of candles to the choice of vestments, from the sequence of prayers to the arrangement of sacred objects, every element carries a meaning that extends beyond the immediately visible. For instance, the use of certain colors, such as deep red or violet, can signify authority, mourning, or spiritual purification. The repetition of gestures, whether a subtle bow, a clasped hand, or the turn of a page in a ritual manuscript, is intended to convey continuity, linking the present ceremony to centuries of tradition. Each act is both practical and mystical, designed to maintain order, reinforce hierarchy, and ensure that sacred knowledge is transmitted accurately and reverently. Even the architecture of the spaces where these rituals occur plays a role. High vaulted ceilings, labyrinthine corridors, and shadowed chapels are not merely aesthetic choices. They are designed to guide attention, to evoke awe, and to reinforce the sense of the sacred. Light and shadow, movement and stillness, all become instruments in a carefully orchestrated performance that bridges the seen and unseen. The very design of these spaces underscores the duality that runs through the Vatican, the tension between revelation and concealment, between the publicly accessible and the intimately guarded. There's also an element of mystery intentionally preserved in these rituals. Some practices, known only to a select few, have never been fully documented for public understanding. They are protected, not merely to withhold information, but to maintain their spiritual potency. In a place where knowledge is both revered and carefully managed, secrecy is a form of respect, a recognition that some truths require patience, context, and readiness to be fully comprehended. These hidden rituals serve as reminders that the Vatican's authority is not simply ceremonial. It is cultivated, refined, and enacted through generations of deliberate practice. Moreover, the symbols and rituals intertwine with the broader history of the Church. Many are echoes of centuries-old traditions, some predating the formal establishment of the Vatican itself. Others were shaped by pivotal events, schisms, councils, reforms, and crises that demanded both spiritual guidance and subtle political navigation. In this way, every hidden ceremony is not just a moment of spiritual reflection, but a living record of the Church's resilience, ingenuity, and continuity. They are historical palimpsests, layered with meaning, waiting for careful observation to uncover the stories embedded within. The allure of these rituals, particularly those that remain inaccessible to the public, is heightened by the human fascination with mystery. Symbols hint at truths, gestures suggest authority, and the careful choreography of every action implies a depth of knowledge beyond the ordinary gaze. While many of these mysteries are preserved for spiritual reasons, the aura of secrecy inevitably sparks curiosity. This is where the Vatican's genius becomes apparent. By balancing revelation and concealment, it invites contemplation and wonder, drawing observers into a quiet engagement with history, faith, and power without ever forcing disclosure. As we linger in thought, it becomes evident that the Vatican's hidden rituals are more than performances. They are expressions of identity, continuity, and influence. They connect the present to the past, the visible to the unseen, and the spiritual to the temporal. The Church has long understood that symbols, when carefully guarded and thoughtfully enacted, become vessels for memory, instruments of authority, and gateways into deeper understanding. In this quiet realm of ceremonial precision and symbolic resonance, the Vatican teaches a subtle lesson. That knowledge is not merely acquired, it is experienced, transmitted, and preserved. And as we prepare to explore the deeper, more controversial secrets, the forbidden texts, the hidden decisions, the facts deliberately withheld, the lessons of these rituals remind us that what is unseen often holds as much power as what is visible. In the hushed spaces behind locked doors, amid the cadence of prayer and the choreography of tradition, the Vatican's mysteries continue to unfold, waiting for those patient enough to listen and observe. Beyond the grandeur of St. Peter's Square and the whispers of hidden rituals lies a treasure trove of knowledge the Vatican has long guarded from public view. These are the forbidden texts, manuscripts, and codices that contain information deemed too sensitive, too controversial, or too disruptive for general access. While the Church has preserved these works with meticulous care, they're not always celebrated or openly discussed. Instead, they dwell quietly in the archives, cataloged and safeguarded, each a fragment of history that challenges, illuminates, or complicates our understanding of faith, power, and the human experience. The forbidden texts are diverse, encompassing letters, theological treatises, philosophical musings, and scientific observations. Some challenge accepted dogma, proposing interpretations of Scripture that were considered heretical in their time. Others document events, decisions, or disputes that might have altered the course of history had they been widely known. And still others contain information that blurs the line between legend and fact. Accounts of visions, prophecies, or encounters that hint at mysteries beyond ordinary comprehension. Each document exists in the tension between revelation and concealment, a quiet testament to the Church's role as both custodian of knowledge and arbiter of what the world is prepared to see. One of the most compelling aspects of these forbidden texts is the story of their survival. Many were targeted for destruction during periods of doctrinal crackdown, political upheaval, or inquisitional scrutiny. Books deemed heretical were burned, letters censored, and manuscripts hidden or relocated to remote chambers within the Vatican. The texts that survived did so because of the careful judgment of archivists and scholars who recognized their historical value, even as they understood the potential danger in exposing their contents. This selective preservation, itself a delicate act of secrecy, is what has allowed modern researchers to glimpse fragments of knowledge that were once considered too perilous for public awareness. Some manuscripts reveal internal Church debates that were never meant for outsiders. Doctrinal disputes, deliberations over the interpretation of Scripture, and discussions of policy, whether theological or political, are recorded with painstaking precision. Reading these texts is like peering into a chamber of thought where spiritual leaders wrestled with profound questions, aware of both the weight of eternity and the practical consequences of their decisions. The forbidden texts, in this sense, are not just controversial or secretive. They're living records of human struggle, wisdom, and the pursuit of understanding in a complex and often perilous world. Among the more famous categories of these restricted documents are letters exchanged between popes and monarchs, or between the Vatican and scholars whose ideas challenged orthodoxy. Some correspondences hint at suppressed scientific discoveries, forgotten knowledge, or insights in a natural philosophy that were ahead of their time. Others reveal the Vatican's cautious engagement with ideas that could destabilize faith or social order, illustrating a careful balancing act between intellectual curiosity and institutional preservation. The tension between progress and control, between knowledge and authority, is palpable in these texts, and it is precisely this tension that has contributed to their enigmatic aura. The forbidden texts also include manuscripts that explore spiritual or mystical experiences deemed too complex or esoteric for general readership. Accounts of visions, revelations, and encounters with the divine are documented with remarkable attention to detail, yet often accompanied by warnings, interpretive notes, or caveats. These works suggest a church deeply engaged with the metaphysical, aware of human longing for understanding, and cautious about the consequences of exposing mysteries prematurely. They occupy a liminal space between faith and speculation, offering glimpses into dimensions of experience that are at once personal and universal. An element of intrigue is found in codices written in languages that are now obscure or partially lost. Some contain encrypted passages, symbolic notations, or archaic alphabets designed to limit comprehension to a select few. These works, often cataloged but rarely fully translated, invite speculation about what knowledge they contain. Could they preserve early theological debates, alternative histories, or forgotten scientific observations? Or perhaps they hold instructions, rituals, or meditative practices considered too potent or dangerous for wide dissemination. The very presence of such texts fuels curiosity, inviting both reverence and the imagination of those who seek to understand what lies beyond the visible. Historical accounts suggest that some of these forbidden texts influenced decisions and events long before the modern era. Rulers sought access, scholars petitioned for permission, and controversies occasionally erupted over their content. Yet, throughout history, the Vatican has exercised careful discretion, allowing limited access and controlling the flow of knowledge. In doing so, the Church has maintained authority, shaped the narrative of history, and ensured that sensitive information is revealed only when the timing is deemed appropriate. This interplay between knowledge and secrecy is a defining characteristic of the institution, one that persists to this day. The mystique surrounding forbidden texts is heightened by their inaccessibility. Unlike the public libraries or digital archives of the modern world, these manuscripts remain physically guarded, often requiring specific credentials, careful oversight, and years of preparation to access. This inaccessibility amplifies their aura, suggesting that the knowledge contained within is not merely lost or forgotten, but deliberately preserved, carefully curated, and intentionally hidden. It is this careful stewardship that has allowed the Vatican to remain both a spiritual and historical authority, blending reverence for knowledge with the prudence of discretion. Yet, even in their secrecy, these texts invite reflection. They challenge the notion of absolute authority, prompt questions about human curiosity, and illustrate the delicate balance between enlightenment and restraint. Reading them, even indirectly through historical accounts or partial translations, allows us to glimpse the Church's engagement with ideas that are at once bold, dangerous, and profoundly human. They remind us that history is rarely linear, that truth is often layered, and that knowledge, when carefully guarded, carries both power and responsibility. As we move further into the Vatican's concealed histories, it becomes clear that the forbidden texts are more than mere curiosities. They are the heartbeat of hidden knowledge, a bridge between faith and reason, light and shadow, revelation and secrecy. They offer us a quiet invitation to ponder what is known, to wonder about what is withheld, and to recognize that the Vatican's mysteries are often not about deception, but about careful preservation. Within these pages lie questions that have shaped centuries, stories that have influenced nations, and truths that continue to linger, waiting for the patient observer to encounter them in silence. Beyond the preserved texts and whispered rituals, the Vatican has long been a place where decisions of immense consequence are quietly made. These are choices that often remain hidden from the public eye, deliberate acts that have shaped not only the trajectory of the Church, but the history of nations. The corridors of power within the Vatican are lined not just with sacred art and monumental architecture, but with the weight of countless decisions, recorded in private deliberations, letters, and council notes that few outsiders have ever glimpsed. Each decision carries a dual purpose: to guide spiritual life while carefully managing worldly influence, often leaving only subtle traces visible to those observing from afar. Many of these hidden decisions emerged during times of crisis. Wars, plagues, and political upheaval presented dilemmas that demanded both moral clarity and strategic prudence. At such moments, popes and their advisors navigated a delicate path between ethical imperatives and practical consequences. Documents preserved in the archives reveal intense debates over issues ranging from the support of monarchs to the management of dissent within the clergy. These deliberations were rarely straightforward. They involved balancing competing interests, interpreting complex doctrines, and anticipating the broader ripple effects of any action. The public often only witnessed the result: a papal decree, a diplomatic visit, or a public statement, while the intricate reasoning behind the decision remained hidden, preserved only in quiet records. One of the most striking examples of such hidden decisions is the Vatican's engagement with political powers throughout history. Popes wielded influence not through armies or coercion, but through strategic counsel, alliances, and selective endorsement. They knew that a single letter, carefully worded, could legitimize a monarch's claim or temper a potentially disastrous war. Conversely, silence or refusal could reshape events entirely. The subtlety of these actions demonstrates a remarkable understanding of human behavior, diplomacy, and historical timing. In these moments, the Vatican's authority was exercised with patience, precision, and discretion, leaving only hints for future historians to interpret. Yet not all hidden decisions were purely strategic. Some reflect moments of profound moral conflict, where leaders wrestled with the tension between principle and expediency. For instance, during periods of heresy or schism, the Church faced choices that could determine the survival of entire religious communities. Decisions had to weigh punishment against forgiveness, suppression against dialogue, often under intense external pressure. The archives reveal letters and council notes filled with caution, deliberation, and sometimes disagreement, illustrating that even the highest spiritual authority is shaped by human uncertainty and debate. This human element, preserved in quiet detail, makes the Vatican's history of hidden decisions all the more compelling, emphasizing both the weight and the responsibility inherent in these choices. The intersection of secrecy and power becomes especially vivid when examining the Vatican's role in controversial historical events. Certain wars, political treaties, and diplomatic negotiations bear the imprint of papal intervention, though the public record may obscure the extent of involvement. Scholars have pieced together evidence suggesting that decisions taken behind the walls of the Vatican altered the outcome of conflicts, influenced succession disputes, and even shaped cultural developments. These are decisions made not with grand displays, but with careful calculation, patience, and an understanding of timing. In this sense, the Church acted as both spiritual guide and strategic observer, exercising influence without overt domination. Hidden decisions were also intertwined with the Church's internal governance. Popes, cardinals, and councils navigated disputes over doctrine, succession, and clerical appointments with remarkable subtlety. Each choice carried the potential to influence the moral and political fabric of the institution itself. Archival documents reveal internal debates that were rigorous and sometimes contentious, reflecting differing interpretations of doctrine, ethical responsibility, and practical necessity. These deliberations were rarely recorded for public consumption. They were preserved instead to guide future decision-making, creating a lineage of judgment that extended across centuries. Some decisions were controversial not because they were morally ambiguous, but because they contradicted emerging public narratives or threatened established power structures. These choices, carefully concealed or framed in official statements, reveal the Church's nuanced understanding of perception and influence. By controlling the timing and manner of disclosure, the Vatican ensured that sensitive information did not destabilize the institution or its followers. The contrast between what was known publicly and what was carefully preserved privately underscores a central theme of Vatican history. Authority is exercised not only through visibility, but through discretion, strategy, and patience. Even in modern times, this tradition of hidden decision-making continues. Contemporary popes face global crises, diplomatic negotiations, and moral dilemmas that require both public guidance and private deliberation. While media coverage provides glimpses of papal pronouncements, the full scope of internal discussion often remains hidden, known only to those within the Vatican's inner circles. This enduring pattern illustrates that the practice of careful, deliberate, and sometimes secret decision-making is not an artifact of the past, but a living principle rooted in centuries of accumulated wisdom and institutional memory. The power of these hidden decisions lies in their subtlety. Unlike public acts of authority, they do not call attention to themselves. Their impact is often discovered only retrospectively, as historians uncover correspondences, notes, and documents tucked away in the Vatican archives. Even within the grandeur of marble halls and sacred frescoes, the Vatican is not immune to human imperfection. Behind its serene public image lies a complex history marked by scandals and controversies that have quietly shaped its path. These are not always the headlines of modern media, but subtle ripples of human frailty, ambition, and moral complexity preserved in letters, correspondences, and internal reports. While the Church has often emerged with its authority intact, these hidden episodes reveal the tension between divine aspiration and earthly reality, illuminating a side of history that is seldom visible in polished narratives. Many of the Vatican scandals were carefully contained to protect both the faithful and the institution itself. Some involved disputes over doctrine, where conflicting interpretations of Scripture threatened unity within the Church. Others concern financial dealings, administrative mismanagement, or political alliances that, if exposed, could have provoked public outrage or jeopardized relationships with monarchs and states. In each case, secrecy was not merely about concealment. It was a means of preserving stability, controlling perception, and ensuring that sensitive matters could be resolved with discretion. The archives reveal a constant negotiation between transparency and prudence, a delicate balance that reflects both human vulnerability and institutional responsibility. One striking example of hidden controversy can be found in the Church's interactions with political powers. Throughout history, popes and cardinals often faced delicate choices, supporting certain rulers while opposing others. Correspondences reveal moments of tension, where moral principles clashed with political necessity. A letter might contain measured praise for a monarch, while simultaneously noting private disapproval of actions contrary to Church teaching. Such duality illustrates the Vatican's nuanced understanding of influence. Power is exercised not only through direct action, but through careful observation, selective engagement, and strategic communication. The scandal, in these cases, is often subtle, emerging as historians uncover evidence of compromise, moral ambiguity, and the intersection of spiritual guidance with worldly calculation. Financial controversies have also left an indelible mark on the Vatican's hidden history. The administration of wealth, donations, and property was, and remains, a source of both opportunity and risk. While funds have been used to support charitable work, maintain sacred sites, and fund scholarship, mismanagement or unethical dealings occasionally surfaced, quietly addressed behind closed doors. Internal correspondence and audit notes suggest that corrective actions were often discreet, emphasizing repair over exposure. These financial controversies reveal the human side of stewardship, demonstrating that even institutions of profound spiritual purpose contend with earthly challenges, temptations, and the potential for error. Scandals also extend into matters of personal conduct among clergy and officials. Historical records hint at disputes over behavior, appointments, and interpersonal conflicts that, while not widely publicized, had significant implications for institutional harmony. Letters of reprimand, investigative notes, and council deliberations reveal a system striving to maintain moral integrity while navigating the reality of human imperfection. These hidden episodes highlight a central tension: the aspiration to embody spiritual ideals amid the unavoidable presence of human frailty. They remind us that even the most sacred institutions are shaped by the everyday complexities of human behavior, ambition, and judgment. The interplay of secrecy and revelation is particularly evident in controversial theological debates. At times, certain ideas, texts, or interpretations were suppressed, questioned, or even banned, not because they lacked merit, but because their introduction could destabilize existing authority. Manuscripts hint at discussions that challenged prevailing doctrines, at proposals that questioned centuries of orthodoxy, and at intellectual explorations that ventured beyond what the institution considered safe for public consumption. These controversies reveal a church deeply engaged with the boundaries of knowledge, grappling with the tension between intellectual curiosity and doctrinal stability. Public perception often conceals the complexity of these controversies. To outsiders, the Vatican may appear unchanging, serene, and above worldly entanglements. Yet archival evidence suggests a constant negotiation between public image and internal reality. Controversies were managed quietly, guided by a keen understanding of human psychology and the social consequences of disclosure. By preserving discretion, the Church maintained trust, ensured continuity, and allowed for the careful resolution of disputes without provoking unnecessary upheaval. The contrast between what was visible and what was concealed is a defining characteristic of its historical resilience, illustrating the careful orchestration of authority, secrecy, and morality. Some scandals carry an enduring fascination precisely because of their ambiguity. Letters, council notes, and anecdotal records hint at disputes that were never fully resolved, behaviors that were quietly corrected, or alliances that were tactically hidden. The gaps in the historical record invite speculation, creating a sense of mystery that lingers centuries later. These unresolved elements of controversy remind us that history is often a mosaic of visible facts and concealed truths, where what is left unspoken can be as powerful as what is documented. The human dimension of these hidden scandals also evokes empathy. The Vatican, though an institution of immense authority, is staffed and guided by people, individuals navigating duty, conscience, and the complexities of belief. Scandals reflect not just failure or error, but moments of tension between moral aspiration and practical reality. By examining these episodes, we gain insight into the challenges of maintaining ethical integrity within a framework of spiritual and worldly responsibility. The documents that preserve these stories are quiet witnesses, capturing the nuance, caution, and deliberation that characterize the Church's historical approach to controversy. The lessons of these hidden scandals extend beyond sensationalism. They illuminate the delicate relationship between secrecy, morality, and institutional survival. They show that the Vatican has long understood the power of discretion, the necessity of careful judgment, and the potential consequences of public exposure. Each controversy, while quietly managed, contributed to the shaping of policy, doctrine, and internal governance, reinforcing a system designed to endure the trials of both faith and history. As we consider the Vatican's scandals and hidden controversies, a recurring theme emerges: the tension between the human and the divine, the visible and the concealed, the moral ideal and practical reality. These episodes, preserved with meticulous care, demonstrate that mystery and imperfection coexist even within the most revered institutions. They prepare us to explore the next layer of the Vatican's hidden world: the alliances, secret networks, and influential decisions that remain invisible to most, yet quietly shape the course of history. The Vatican has often walked a fine line between neutrality and influence during times of global conflict, especially during the two world wars. While its official stance was one of neutrality, many scholars and historians have questioned how far the Vatican's involvement truly went behind the scenes. What role did the Holy See play in the shaping of Europe's fate during the chaotic and bloodied eras of the World Wars? And how did it maintain its political and moral standing while such global atrocities were unfolding? In the early 20th century, the Vatican was both a spiritual leader and a political entity. With Europe in turmoil, the Vatican's influence could not be separated from the larger political realities of the time. This section delves into the heart of the Vatican's covert operations during the First and Second World Wars, unveiling both the public and private interactions of the Holy See with key figures in the military, political, and intelligence circles of the time. World War I. Papal neutrality or covert alignment. During World War I, Pope Benedict XV's call for peace went largely unheard, overshadowed by the mounting tides of war. The Vatican's official position of neutrality gave it a unique platform to navigate the shifting allegiances of the time. However, many have pointed out that the Vatican, despite its neutral stance, was not without its connections to various European powers, including Germany and Austria-Hungary. Speculation surrounds whether the Pope turned a blind eye to the atrocities committed by these regimes, or whether he was working behind the scenes to secure certain outcomes for the Church's broader interests. Documents that are now sealed suggest that the Vatican may have had clandestine dealings with Central Powers, while covertly trying to prevent the spread of socialism, which the Church saw as a threat to its power. The Vatican and fascist regimes. A controversial alliance, the situation became even murkier during World War II when the Vatican, under Pope Pius XII, faced accusations of sympathizing with the Axis powers, particularly Nazi Germany. Despite the Church's public calls for peace, Pope Pius XI's lack of strong condemnation of Hitler's actions remains a point of controversy. Some argue that the Pope's silence was a strategic maneuver aimed at preserving the Vatican's power and ensuring the survival of the Church within the turbulent landscape of fascist regimes. Others claim that Pius XII actively colluded with Nazi officials, either to protect Church interests or to work out secret deals regarding the status of the Vatican and the future of Catholic influence in post-war Europe. This section explores the complex nature of the Vatican's relationship with Mussolini's fascist Italy and Hitler's Nazi Germany. The Lateran Treaty of 1929, which established Vatican City as an independent state, is pivotal here. It secured the Vatican's position in Italy, but also bound the Church to Mussolini's regime. Did this treaty pave the way for further concessions and secret agreements between the Vatican and fascist governments during the war? Investigations into the Vatican's financial dealings and its alleged sheltering of war criminals after the war suggest that the Church may have been more involved in these conflicts than it appeared. Vatican's secret role in post-war Europe as World War II came to a close. The Vatican found itself caught between the advancing Allies and the looming shadow of the Soviet Union. The Vatican's primary concern shifted to the preservation of Catholic influence in a post-war Europe that was now divided by the Iron Curtain. While much of the world focused on the rebuilding of Europe, the Vatican was quietly involved in orchestrating a covert exodus of Nazi war criminals to South America, an operation that came to be known as Ratlins. The Vatican, it seems, played a direct role in facilitating the escape of these individuals, some of whom had committed grave atrocities during the war under the guise of providing religious sanctuary. The motives behind these actions remain unclear. Was the Vatican seeking to protect its ideological allies, or were these efforts driven by a more pragmatic desire to maintain influence in a rapidly changing world? The post-war Vatican and the Cold War. A shift in strategy. The Cold War presented the Vatican with yet another challenge: how to deal with the rise of communism. In countries under Soviet influence, Catholic communities were systematically persecuted, and the Church's property and power were dismantled. The Vatican's response to this was not one of vocal opposition, but of subtle diplomacy and behind-the-scenes negotiations with both the Western powers and the Soviet Union. Pope Pius XI's successor, Pope John XXII, initiated a policy of reconciliation, even reaching out to the Soviet Union in the hopes of bridging the ideological divide. This period also saw the Vatican's involvement in the secretive efforts of the CIA and other Western intelligence agencies in trying to undermine communist influence, especially in Europe and Latin America. The Vatican became an essential player in the geopolitical game, walking a tightrope between maintaining its moral authority and engaging with the world's major superpowers in ways that remained hidden from the public eye. The Vatican's role in shaping the post-war order, this final part of the section reflects on the broader implications of the Vatican's actions during the World Wars. Despite its apparent neutrality, the Vatican remained a key player in shaping the post-war world order. Its actions, often subtle, sometimes secretive, left an indelible mark on global politics. The influence of the Church continued to extend far beyond religious matters, and in many ways, it helped shape the policies of nations during the Cold War. The question remains, was the Vatican merely trying to protect its own interests, or was it guided by a broader vision for the future of humanity, one shaped by its religious ideals, but also deeply influenced by realpolitik? In unraveling the Vatican's covert role during these turbulent times, it becomes clear that the Vatican was not simply a passive observer. It was actively shaping the course of history, navigating through darkness and light, acting as both protector and manipulator of the global order. During the two world wars, the Vatican maintained an official stance of neutrality, yet its influence and actions behind the scenes suggest a more complex role in shaping global events. The Vatican, as both a spiritual and political entity, could not escape the tides of history. Its involvement, though often masked, was not without consequence. While it publicly sought peace during these conflicts, its interactions with the military and political powers of Europe have raised questions about its true allegiances. In World War I, Pope Benedict XV called for peace, but his pleas largely went unheard as the war escalated across Europe. Officially, the Vatican remained neutral, offering no direct support to any of the belligerent powers. However, behind closed doors, it is believed that the Vatican may have been more aligned with the Central Powers, particularly Germany and Austria-Hungary. Documents and correspondence from the time hint at a level of cooperation that was never made public. While the Church may have wished to avoid the destruction of war, it was also concerned with the survival of its power and influence. In this delicate balancing act, some speculate that the Vatican chose its alliances not based on moral grounds, but on pragmatic considerations. It was, after all, attempting to safeguard its position in a Europe rife with political upheaval and changing ideologies. As the world moved into the Second World War, the situation grew even murkier. Pope Pius XII, who took office in 1939, faced widespread criticism for his perceived indifference to the atrocities committed by Nazi Germany. Despite the horrific nature of the Holocaust and the war crimes carried out by the Axis powers, the Pope refrained from condemning Hitler or Mussolini publicly. His silence led to widespread accusations that the Vatican was tacitly supportive of fascism, or at the very least, unwilling to anger powerful regimes that could threaten the Church's position. Some historians suggest that Pius XI's stance was an attempt to protect the Vatican's interests, ensuring its survival amid the rise of totalitarianism, especially in Italy and Germany, where the Church's influence was being systematically undermined. Furthermore, the Vatican's dealings with Mussolini's fascist regime in Italy, particularly the Lateran Treaty of 1929, cemented its relationship with the Italian dictator. This treaty granted the Vatican sovereignty over Vatican City, effectively making it an independent state and securing the Church's power within Italy. However, this pact also aligned the Vatican with Mussolini, whose regime shared many of the Vatican's concerns about the spread of socialism and communism. As the war raged on, the Vatican's position as a neutral power seemed increasingly compromised by its relationships with fascist regimes. Many scholars have questioned whether the Vatican was complicit in supporting the Axis powers or if it was merely trying to survive the chaos of war. One of the most controversial aspects of the Vatican's role in World War II was its involvement in the post-war Ratlins, a network of escape routes used by Nazi war criminals to flee Europe and find refuge in South America. These operations were allegedly facilitated by certain members of the Church, who provided sanctuary to those fleeing Allied justice. The reasons behind this are still debated. Some argue that the Vatican was trying to protect its own interests by helping individuals who could later offer political or financial support. Others suggest that the Church may have been motivated by a desire to protect its traditional allies, especially those who had shared its anti-communist stance. Regardless of the motives, the Vatican's involvement in the Ratlins remains a deeply troubling chapter in its wartime history. After the war, the Vatican found itself in a precarious position, caught between the West and the Soviet Union. As communist influence spread across Eastern Europe, the Church's survival in these regions became a matter of urgency. While the Vatican maintained its public stance of neutrality, behind the scenes, it was deeply involved in diplomatic efforts to counteract the spread of communism. In many instances, the Vatican collaborated with the CIA and other Western intelligence agencies, providing crucial information about Soviet activities and supporting anti-communist movements across the globe. The Vatican's role in the Cold War is a subject of ongoing debate. Some see it as an act of resistance against tyranny, while others view it as a betrayal of the Church's spiritual mission, as it sought to align itself with power brokers to ensure its own survival. While the Vatican's overt actions during the World Wars may have been cloaked in neutrality, its covert role in shaping the geopolitical landscape is undeniable. The Vatican was not merely a passive observer, but an active participant in the global order, its influence stretching far beyond the walls of St. Peter's Basilica. Its behind-the-scenes dealings, both with fascist regimes and Western powers, show a Vatican willing to navigate the moral and political complexities of a war-torn world, always keeping its own survival and its spiritual authority at the forefront. In many ways, the Vatican's role during the World Wars was a delicate dance of diplomacy, secrecy, and survival. It is a legacy that continues to provoke debate as historians attempt to separate fact from speculation. The Vatican's financial empire is one of the most elusive and least understood aspects of its power. Despite being the spiritual center of the Catholic Church, the Vatican is also a major financial entity, with resources that stretch far beyond the gold and treasure stored within its walls. For centuries, the Vatican has been a global player in wealth management, land ownership, art investments, and international financial dealings. Yet much of this remains hidden behind layers of secrecy. How does the Vatican, a religious institution, manage to amass and preserve such immense wealth? And more importantly, how is it used? The Holy See's financial operations are cloaked in mystery, with a degree of opacity that raises questions about its true nature. The Vatican's wealth is derived from a number of sources: donations from Catholics around the world, art collections, real estate holdings, and investments in global markets. The Vatican has traditionally enjoyed financial independence, but its wealth is not simply the result of pious donations. The Vatican's ability to accumulate such wealth lies in its complex and often secretive financial structures. From the papal investments in real estate across the globe to the Vatican Bank's murky dealings with multinational corporations, the Church's economic activities are a key part of its power, but also a major point of controversy. One of the most talked about elements of the Vatican's finances is the Vatican Bank, officially known as the Institute for the Works of Religion, IWAR. Established in 1942, the Vatican Bank is responsible for managing the Church's finances, including funds for the Vatican's operations and religious programs. However, it has long been plagued by scandal and accusations of money laundering, corruption, and ties to criminal organizations. While its role is officially to serve the financial needs of the Church, its operations have often raised eyebrows, particularly given the lack of transparency regarding its activities. The Vatican Bank has been involved in numerous controversies over the decades, from its alleged connections with Italian mafia groups to accusations of aiding authoritarian regimes in hiding illicit wealth. The Vatican's involvement in the global financial system extends far beyond the bank. The Church has vast holdings in real estate, including historic properties in major cities like London, New York, and Paris, as well as investments in companies and financial institutions. The Vatican also possesses an immense collection of art and treasures, many of which are considered priceless. While the Church publicly claims to be focused on serving the poor, its wealth raises uncomfortable questions about the disparity between its teachings and its financial practices. Critics have often pointed out the Church's enormous accumulation of assets, while millions of its followers live in poverty. The existence of lavish collections of art, precious relics, and enormous landholdings is seen by many as hypocritical, especially when compared to the humble lifestyle that the Church purports to promote. Despite these criticisms, the Vatican is fiercely protective of its financial independence. It has fought for decades to maintain autonomy over its wealth, resisting calls for greater transparency and accountability. In recent years, there have been attempts by popes and reformers within the Vatican to bring greater accountability to its financial operations. Pope Francis, for example, has made a concerted effort to clean up the Vatican Bank and address corruption within the financial system of the Church. But even his efforts have been met with resistance from entrenched interests within the Vatican's financial establishment. Many of these forces are said to be deeply invested in the status quo, where secrecy and discretion reign supreme. The Vatican's financial dealings have also extended into global diplomacy. It has been rumored that the Church has used its vast wealth as leverage in negotiations with governments around the world. Some believe that the Vatican has provided financial support to political regimes in exchange for political concessions or favorable treatment. During the Cold War, for example, it is widely acknowledged that the Vatican played a role in anti-communist activities in Eastern Europe and Latin America. There are even whispers that the Vatican may have used its financial resources to fund covert operations that align with its ideological and political goals. Its wealth allows it to exert a unique form of influence that extends beyond religious or moral authority, enabling it to shape world events through subtle but powerful financial maneuvering. While the public may only see the Vatican's wealth in terms of its art and ceremonial grandeur, there is much more beneath the surface. The Church has invested heavily in global real estate markets, including prime properties in major cities, and is involved in various international business ventures, from luxury hotels to investment funds. These holdings have allowed the Vatican to generate a constant stream of income, insulating it from the financial pressures that might otherwise affect a more conventional institution. The Church's wealth is so vast and diffuse that it is nearly impossible to account for all its assets. This lack of transparency has led to calls for greater oversight and reform, but such efforts have often been met with significant resistance from within the Vatican's financial apparatus. Moreover, much of the Vatican's wealth remains off the books in private accounts that are not subject to the same scrutiny as other financial institutions. These private accounts are used to fund not only the Vatican's religious programs, but also a wide array of global initiatives. The secrecy surrounding these accounts has fueled speculation about their true purpose. Some claim that the Vatican uses its hidden wealth to influence political decisions, particularly in countries where Catholicism holds significant sway. Others suggest that the Vatican may be using its assets to fund secret operations that support its global network of influence. One of the most enduring mysteries surrounding the Vatican involves its vast collection of secret archives. Known as the Vatican Secret Archives, this extensive repository contains centuries of documents, letters, and manuscripts, many of which have been sealed away from public view for hundreds of years. The idea of what lies within these walls has captivated historians, conspiracy theorists, and even the general public, leading to endless speculation about the hidden knowledge contained within. But what exactly is kept in the Vatican's secret archives, and why has it remained so closely guarded? The Vatican's secret archives are often referred to as the library of the Church's hidden truths. The collection holds millions of documents that span centuries, many of which are believed to be key to understanding not just the Church's history, but the history of the world itself. From papal decrees and religious correspondence to documents related to political affairs and diplomatic negotiations, the Vatican archives hold a wealth of information. However, access to these documents has been restricted for the vast majority of history, and even today, only a select few are allowed to view them. The Vatican's rationale for this secrecy is unclear. Some argue that the archives contain sensitive materials that could damage the church's reputation or threaten its power, while others suggest that the documents may be related to matters of national security or international diplomacy. Among the most famous documents thought to be housed in the archives are those related to the church's interactions with various political regimes throughout history, including the Nazis, fascists, and communist regimes. Many have speculated that these documents might reveal the Vatican's covert support for certain political movements, or even its involvement in darker aspects of history, such as the Holocaust or the Inquisition. There are also rumors that the Vatican holds documents related to ancient secrets, including early Christian texts, letters from prominent historical figures, and evidence of hidden knowledge passed down through the ages. These documents, some claim, could change the way we understand not only the history of Christianity, but the very foundations of Western civilization. Over the years, there have been efforts to gain access to these archives. While the Vatican has released a number of documents to scholars and researchers, many of the most significant documents remain sealed. In 1998, Pope John Paul II authorized limited access to the archives, allowing select historians and scholars to examine documents from the 20th century, but access to older materials remains highly restricted. However, it is widely believed that even the Vatican itself has never fully explored the entire contents of the archives, as it would require a vast effort to catalog and decipher centuries of paperwork. This raises the question, what are they hiding, and why is it so important to keep these secrets? There are several theories about what the Vatican might be concealing in its secret archives. Some of the most persistent rumors focus on the Church's involvement with certain global events, such as the rise of Nazism in Europe. It has long been speculated that the Vatican, under Pope Pius XII, may have had secret agreements with Nazi Germany and other Axis powers during World War II. Documents supposedly held in the archives could reveal the nature of this relationship, whether it was one of silent support, covert negotiation, or simple political survival. Some even suggest that the Vatican may have been involved in helping Nazi war criminals escape prosecution after the war, further complicating its reputation. Another mystery that has surrounded the Vatican's secret archives is the question of its relationship with the early Christian Church and the development of Christian doctrine. There have been rumors for centuries that hidden documents in the archives contain information that could radically alter our understanding of early Christianity. Some believe that the Vatican may possess secret texts, lost gospels, or early Christian writings that could challenge the traditional narrative of the life of Jesus and the formation of the Church. These texts, which some claim were intentionally suppressed or destroyed by early church authorities, might provide a different perspective on key theological issues, such as the divinity of Christ, the role of women in early Christianity, or the true nature of the Church's relationship with political power. Furthermore, the archives are believed to contain records of interactions between the Vatican and powerful political figures throughout history, many of whom played significant roles in shaping global events. From kings and emperors to revolutionaries and presidents, the Vatican has had a hand in shaping the destinies of nations. The secret archives likely hold records of these interactions, some of which may be too politically sensitive or morally compromising to be revealed to the public. There have been rumors that the Vatican used its influence to intervene in major political decisions, manipulate world events, or broker secret deals with world leaders in exchange for political or religious concessions. These records could provide insight into the true scope of the Vatican's involvement in shaping world history, beyond what is publicly known. The Vatican itself has long defended the existence of its archives, claiming that they are a necessary part of preserving the history of the Church and its role in world affairs. Yet the secrecy surrounding them only deepens the mystery. Some experts argue that the Vatican is merely protecting itself from historical revisionism, while others suggest that the Church may be intentionally suppressing information that could potentially damage its reputation or threaten its standing as one of the most influential institutions in the world. Despite these efforts to keep the archives sealed, there are signs that the Vatican is slowly beginning to open up. In recent years, Pope Francis has expressed a willingness to release more documents from the archives, particularly those related to controversial periods in history, such as the Holocaust and the Inquisition. Yet, even with this openness, the Vatican remains extremely selective about what is made available, often citing privacy concerns or the need to protect individuals who may still be living. The Vatican's reluctance to fully disclose the contents of its secret archives only fuels the ongoing speculation that there is far more to uncover. In a world increasingly driven by transparency, the Vatican's refusal to fully open its archives stands as a reminder of its power and influence. The very idea that such an immense trove of knowledge is held behind closed doors speaks to the Church's ability to control information and shape history according to its own terms. The mysteries contained within the Vatican's secret archives will likely continue to captivate the world for years to come. Whether or not these secrets will ever be revealed remains uncertain, but the potential for revelations, both historical and spiritual, continues to spark the imagination of those who seek to understand the true nature of the Vatican's power, its past, and its future. Throughout history, the Vatican's influence has extended far beyond matters of faith and theology, weaving itself into the fabric of global politics. One of the most striking aspects of its power is the way in which the Vatican has acted as a political entity, often involved in covert operations and alliances with governments, intelligence agencies, and global powers. The Church has frequently played a behind-the-scenes role in shaping not just religious affairs, but geopolitical events that have influenced the course of history. However, the exact nature of these political alliances remains largely obscured, with many speculating that the Vatican has used its position to manipulate or align with world powers for its own strategic interests. The Vatican's political maneuvering is not limited to its interactions with secular governments, but extends to its dealings with global powers, often influencing decisions in ways that would not be immediately obvious. One of the most prominent examples of the Vatican's role in international politics occurred during the Cold War, when the Vatican found itself caught in the ideological struggle between the Western democracies and the communist bloc. Despite the Church's public claim to neutrality, it is widely believed that the Vatican actively sought to counter the spread of communism, especially in Europe and Latin America. Some historians argue that the Vatican was not just a passive observer during the Cold War, but an active participant in efforts to weaken communist movements and regimes. Pope Pius XII, who served during World War II and the early Cold War years, has been the subject of intense scrutiny for his political decisions during this time. His involvement, or lack thereof, in World War II is one of the most controversial aspects of his papacy. While he maintained an official stance of neutrality during the war, some argue that Pius XII tacitly supported the Allies by providing covert assistance to anti-Nazi forces. There are also accounts suggesting that the Vatican used its influence to facilitate secret negotiations with both the Allies and Axis powers, with the aim of protecting its own interests and minimizing the destruction of its assets during the war. However, what remains particularly mysterious is the extent to which the Vatican may have used its influence to affect the post-war political landscape. In the aftermath of the war, the Vatican continued to work behind the scenes to influence the political order, particularly in Europe. It is believed that the Vatican played a significant role in shaping the trajectory of post-war Europe, including the political realignments in Italy and Spain. The Vatican's relationship with political figures, such as Italian Prime Minister Alcide de Gasperi, was crucial in ensuring that Catholic political movements maintained power in the newly restructured governments. This secretive involvement in post-war politics raises questions about how much influence the Vatican truly exerted in shaping the course of European history during this pivotal period. However, perhaps one of the most intriguing and contentious elements of the Vatican's political dealings during the Cold War was its relationship with the United States and the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. Declassified documents suggest that the Vatican was not only aware of the growing threat posed by communism, but may have collaborated with the CIA to combat it. This collaboration took many forms, from intelligence sharing to direct support for anti-communist movements in Eastern Europe and Latin America. There are reports that the Vatican, through its vast network of clergy and religious institutions around the world, played a crucial role in supporting the overthrow of communist governments and in promoting the interests of the United States during the Cold War. While these efforts were presented as part of a shared ideological commitment to oppose communism, many have raised questions about the morality of these actions, particularly when they involve supporting authoritarian regimes that were as oppressive as the communist ones they opposed. The Vatican's relationship with authoritarian regimes extends beyond the Cold War era. Throughout the 20th century, the Vatican was often accused of working with or even supporting dictatorial regimes when it suited its interests. In particular, the Vatican's dealings with fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, and later, military juntas in South America have drawn widespread criticism. During the rise of fascism in Europe, Pope Pius XI signed the Lateran Treaty in 1929 with Benito Mussolini, which established the Vatican as an independent state, securing its political and financial autonomy. This agreement has been seen by many as an act of appeasement toward Mussolini's fascist regime, and some have speculated that it was a calculated move by the Vatican to protect its own interests in a politically unstable Italy. Similarly, during World War II, the Vatican's complex relationship with Hitler's Nazi regime remains a subject of intense debate. While there was no official collaboration, some argue that the Vatican was hesitant to publicly condemn the atrocities committed by the Nazis, particularly given the power dynamics at play in Europe at the time. The Vatican's ability to navigate these politically fraught alliances has raised questions about its true motivations. On the surface, the Church has always presented itself as a neutral moral authority, but its involvement in political affairs suggests a much more pragmatic and self-interested approach. The Vatican's primary concern has often been the preservation of its own power and influence, and its political dealings have reflected this priority. The Church's support for certain political regimes, particularly in the mid-20th century, may have been driven less by ideological concerns and more by the desire to maintain its position in a world increasingly defined by ideological struggles and political instability. In more recent times, the Vatican has continued to exert its influence in global politics, though in more subtle ways. Pope Francis, for instance, has played a key role in advocating for diplomacy and dialogue in international conflicts, such as the rapprochement between the United States and Cuba. Under his papacy, the Vatican has sought to position itself as a mediator in global political crises, using its moral authority to foster peace and reconciliation. Despite this more visible approach to diplomacy, the Vatican continues to wield a considerable amount of behind-the-scenes influence. With its vast network of ambassadors, religious leaders, and institutions serving as powerful tools for shaping global political dynamics. This subtle but significant role in politics is one of the most remarkable aspects of the Vatican's continued relevance in the modern world. The Vatican's ability to navigate complex political landscapes, whether through collaboration with governments, intelligence agencies, or even rebel movements, demonstrates a sophisticated level of political maneuvering. Its actions, though often cloaked in religious rhetoric, reveal a deeply pragmatic and strategic approach to global power. Whether in its dealings with the United States, its covert support of anti-communist movements, or its more recent involvement in peace processes, the Vatican remains one of the most influential political actors in the world today. In the end, the Vatican's role in world politics serves as a reminder that it is not just a religious institution, but a political entity with far-reaching influence. Its ability to shape the course of history, often in ways that are hidden from the public eye, underscores the complexity of its power. The Vatican's political actions, whether in the context of global diplomacy, intelligence, or direct support of regimes, reflect a broader understanding of its place in the world and its commitment to preserving its own authority and influence, even in the face of changing political tides. For centuries, the Vatican has been known for its vast collection of sacred relics and artifacts, some of which are believed to hold extraordinary power or divine significance. These treasures, scattered across its chapels, museums, and archives, are often seen as symbols of the Church's spiritual authority. However, the true extent of the Vatican's collection and the mysteries surrounding some of its most prized possessions remain a source of fascination and speculation. What makes these relics so important, and why has the Vatican been so protective of them throughout history? Among the most intriguing of these relics are the ancient manuscripts, scrolls, and religious texts that have been housed within the Vatican's walls for centuries. Many of these documents predate the formation of the Catholic Church itself and are considered to be some of the earliest written accounts of Christian teachings. Some even suggest that the Vatican holds manuscripts that could radically alter the understanding of early Christianity, texts that challenge the traditional narratives surrounding Jesus, the apostles, and the origins of the faith. Scholars and conspiracy theorists alike have long speculated that the Vatican is deliberately concealing these texts in order to preserve its established authority and control over Christian doctrine. One of the most famous examples of such speculation involves the so-called Gnostic Gospels, early Christian writings that were not included in the New Testament canon. These texts, some of which were rediscovered in the 1940s in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, provide alternative views of Christian teachings, including different portrayals of Jesus and his followers. Some of these Gospels suggest that early Christianity was far more diverse than the Church has traditionally acknowledged, with various sects espousing conflicting views about the nature of Christ, salvation, and the role of women in the Church. Could the Vatican be hiding these documents because they undermine the orthodox teachings of the Church? Or is there something even more secretive at play? Hidden knowledge that could rewrite the story of Christianity itself? The Vatican has long been accused of deliberately suppressing these alternative narratives, and its refusal to release certain texts to the public only fuels these suspicions. The Church's secrecy surrounding its collections of ancient religious texts suggests that there may be more at stake than just theological concerns. Some believe that the Vatican's reluctance to share these texts is tied to its desire to maintain control over the Christian narrative. After all, if documents were revealed that contradicted the official doctrine of the Church, it could challenge the very foundations of the faith, leading to a crisis of authority within the Catholic world. In addition to these ancient manuscripts, the Vatican also possesses a staggering array of religious relics, physical objects that are believed to have a direct connection to Jesus Christ or the saints. These relics include pieces of the true cross, fragments of St. Peter's bones, and the veils and shrouds that are said to have belonged to the Virgin Mary. For centuries, these relics have been venerated by the faithful, and their authenticity has been the subject of much debate. While some believe these relics hold miraculous powers or serve as conduits of divine grace, others argue that many of them are mere forgeries used by the Church to enhance its power and influence over the masses. The most famous of these relics is the Shroud of Turin, a linen cloth that is said to have been used to wrap the body of Jesus after his crucifixion. The shroud has been the subject of intense scientific scrutiny, with numerous studies attempting to determine its age, origins, and authenticity. While some believe the shroud is the genuine burial cloth of Christ, others argue that it is a medieval forgery. The Vatican has remained largely silent on the matter, neither confirming nor denying its authenticity. This ambiguity only adds to the allure of the shroud, which continues to attract pilgrims and scholars alike, all eager to uncover its secrets. Then there are the mysterious Holy Grails that the Church is believed to possess, with some claiming that the Vatican holds the very cup from which Jesus drank during the Last Supper. The search for the Holy Grail has been a central theme in Christian lore for centuries, and it has inspired countless legends and myths. Many believe that the Grail possesses mystical powers, granting immortality or divine knowledge to those who find it. The idea that the Vatican might possess such an artifact, hidden away in its vaults, carefully guarded from prying eyes, has only fueled the imagination of historians, scholars, and treasure hunters. Beyond these physical relics, the Vatican's collection also includes numerous works of art, many of which are considered priceless masterpieces. These paintings, sculptures, and frescoes are not only revered for their artistic value, but are also seen as expressions of divine inspiration. Some of the most famous works in the world, including Michelangelo's frescoes on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and Raphael's Vatican rooms, are housed within the Vatican. However, the sheer quantity and quality of the Vatican's art collection raises a more profound question. Why has the Church accumulated such vast wealth in the form of precious art and artifacts? While these works are often presented as part of the Church's cultural heritage, they also serve as symbols of its immense wealth and influence. Is the Vatican merely preserving these works for the sake of history, or are they part of a larger agenda, an attempt to maintain its status as a supreme authority on both spiritual and worldly matters? Some critics argue that the Vatican's obsession with relics and sacred artifacts is a form of spiritual and material exploitation. These objects, many of which are believed to have divine significance, are used to attract pilgrims, boost the Church's influence, and generate significant revenue. By associating itself with these powerful symbols, the Vatican has been able to maintain a hold over the faithful, convincing them that the Church has access to sacred knowledge and divine favor. In a sense, the relics and artifacts held by the Vatican serve not only as symbols of faith, but as tools for the Church's political and economic power. Yet, despite the commercial and political significance of these relics, they continue to inspire awe and wonder in those who encounter them. Whether it is the Shroud of Turin, the relics of saints, or the art treasures that adorn the Vatican's walls, these objects remind us of the long history of the Church and its profound impact on Western civilization. The question remains, however, whether the Vatican is truly the guardian of these sacred objects, or whether it is simply using them to consolidate its power and influence in a world that has become increasingly skeptical of its claims to spiritual authority. As long as the Vatican continues to protect and preserve these relics, the mysteries surrounding them will remain unresolved. The Vatican's influence on world events extends beyond religion and politics. It has long been intertwined with the fabric of global economics. The Catholic Church's immense wealth is a subject that has stirred both admiration and suspicion for centuries. Hidden beneath the surface of its spiritual mission lies a network of financial assets, investments, and properties that span the globe, making the Vatican one of the wealthiest entities in the world. But how exactly does the Vatican amass such vast wealth? And why has it remained so secretive about its financial dealings? At the heart of the Vatican's financial empire is the Vatican Bank, officially known as the Institute for the Works of Religion, IWAR. Founded in 1942, the Vatican Bank was established to manage the financial assets of the Church and its charitable operations. However, over the years, the IWAR has become infamous for its lack of transparency, its secretive nature, and its involvement in a number of financial scandals. The Vatican Bank operates in much the same way as any other bank, holding deposits, making investments, and facilitating financial transactions for Catholic institutions worldwide. Yet, because of the Church's insistence on secrecy, it has been difficult for outsiders to fully understand the scale of the bank's operations or the source of its wealth. The secrecy surrounding the Vatican Bank has been a source of endless speculation. For decades, the Vatican refused to disclose even basic details about the bank's operations, including its account holders and its financial transactions. Some have suggested that the Vatican's finances are deeply entangled with those of powerful families, corporations, and governments. Others claim that the Vatican has used its financial influence to engage in questionable practices, including money laundering and hiding assets for the rich and powerful. The IWAR's lack of oversight and its opaque structure have led to numerous allegations of corruption, and the Vatican's reluctance to open its books to the public only fuels these suspicions. One of the most infamous episodes in the Vatican Bank's history occurred in the early 1980s, when the bank was implicated in the collapse of the Banco Ambrosiano, one of Italy's largest private banks. The scandal, which involved a massive financial fraud scheme, resulted in the loss of over $1 billion and the mysterious death of the bank's president, Roberto Calvi. It was later revealed that the Vatican Bank had been involved in the collapse, with allegations that it had helped funnel money through the bank to support political movements and organizations aligned with the Church's interests. Although the Vatican denied any wrongdoing, the scandal left a permanent stain on the bank's reputation and raised questions about the Vatican's role in international financial networks. The Vatican's financial dealings are not limited to its banking activities. Over the centuries, the Church has accumulated vast amounts of property, real estate holdings that stretch across the globe. The Vatican is one of the largest landowners in the world, with estates in some of the most valuable locations on Earth. From prime real estate in Rome to properties in New York, London, and beyond, the Church's land holdings are a testament to its enormous financial power. Many of these properties are not just churches or religious buildings, but valuable pieces of real estate that generate significant income through rentals, investments, and sales. The Church's portfolio of land and buildings is often shielded from public scrutiny, with many of its assets remaining hidden behind layers of ownership and complex legal structures. One of the most significant aspects of the Vatican's financial empire is its relationship with the global stock market. The Church has long invested in stocks, bonds, and other financial instruments, accumulating vast wealth through its investments. While the Vatican has occasionally faced criticism for its involvement in the financial markets, it has consistently maintained that its investments are made in accordance with Catholic principles. The Vatican has a strict policy of avoiding investments in companies that engage in activities that are deemed morally objectionable, such as those involved in the arms trade, pornography, or gambling. However, critics argue that the Vatican's investments are often contradictory to its moral stance, with evidence suggesting that the Church has profited from investments in companies with questionable business practices. In recent years, the Vatican has made efforts to reform its financial practices, particularly in light of growing criticism and scrutiny from both the public and the international community. Under Pope Francis, the Vatican has taken steps to increase transparency in its financial dealings, including appointing new officials to oversee the Vatican Bank and introducing reforms designed to combat corruption and improve financial accountability. Despite these efforts, the Vatican's financial operations remain largely opaque, and many continue to question the true nature of its wealth and how it is being used. The question of how the Vatican uses its wealth is another point of contention. On the one hand, the Church claims that its financial resources are used to fund its charitable and humanitarian work around the world, including programs to combat poverty, support education, and provide health care. The Vatican operates a number of charitable organizations, such as Caritas Internationalis, which provides aid to millions of people in need. Additionally, the Church spends vast sums on maintaining its religious institutions, such as the construction and upkeep of churches, schools, and hospitals. However, critics argue that the Vatican's wealth could be put to better use, pointing out that the Church's financial holdings far exceed the needs of its charitable endeavors. Some suggest that the Vatican should sell off some of its assets and redirect those funds to support the world's poorest communities, rather than holding onto vast sums of money and property. The Vatican's wealth is also a source of internal debate. As the sun sets over the Vatican, its ancient walls seem to whisper secrets that have been hidden for centuries, tantalizing the curious and keeping its mysteries alive for another generation. The world's smallest state continues to exert an outsized influence on global history, religion, politics, and culture, all while remaining largely veiled in secrecy. The truths and facts we have uncovered in this documentary are just the tip of an iceberg that stretches far below the surface, leaving us with more questions than answers. And yet, the Vatican continues to endure, its enigmatic nature only adding to the allure and power it holds over billions of people around the world. The Vatican's carefully cultivated image of holiness and moral authority has been a powerful tool in shaping its narrative, but the reality is far more complex. The mysteries surrounding its hidden archives, financial dealings, and political maneuverings remind us that the Vatican is not just a religious institution. It is an institution of immense power, influence, and control. For centuries, it has operated with a level of secrecy that few others can match, guiding not only the spiritual lives of millions, but also the destinies of nations, entire regions, and global conflicts. The forbidden facts we've uncovered show just how deep the Church's influence runs, from shaping the very foundation of Western civilization to quietly pulling strings behind closed doors in international diplomacy. Despite its reputation as a spiritual beacon of light, the Vatican has always been a place where light and shadow intertwine. The contrast between its public image as the seat of Christian faith and its less publicized dealings, whether in finance, politics, or even questionable historical actions, presents a dissonance that is difficult to ignore. While the Vatican has long been a bastion of piety and faith, it also possesses a complex, multifaceted identity that extends well beyond the religious sphere. The Vatican is a kingdom of secrets, where power dynamics, hidden truths, and the careful preservation of its public persona often play a more critical role than its spiritual mission. For centuries, the Church has acted as a protector of the past, preserving ancient traditions and sacred texts, but has also served as a powerful force in shaping the future. The immense wealth it has accumulated through its land holdings, relics, art collections, and investments is one of the driving forces behind its lasting influence. But with that wealth comes an ethical dilemma. How does an institution dedicated to humility and the teachings of Christ justify its control over such vast material resources? The Vatican's dual role as both a spiritual authority and a financial powerhouse creates a tension that many struggle to reconcile. The Vatican's global impact, both positive and negative, cannot be understated. It has played a key role in advocating for peace, promoting social justice, and providing humanitarian aid, yet it has also been accused of interfering in political processes, covering up scandalous behavior, and enabling corrupt practices. The historical record is full of contradictions, examples of the Vatican making noble gestures in times of crisis, only to be followed by actions that call into question its true motivations. The exposure of facts about its past has, at times, shaken the foundations of the Church, forcing it to reconcile with a history that is not as saintly as its teachings might suggest. As we draw closer to the end of our exploration, the question remains, what does the future hold for this ancient institution? Will the Vatican continue to guard its secrets, or will the increasing pressure for transparency and accountability push it to evolve in a way that aligns more with the values it preaches? Pope Francis has made strides toward reform, advocating for a church that is more transparent, humble, and compassionate. His efforts to address issues such as sexual abuse within the clergy, financial reform, and social justice initiatives show a desire to create a more modern and inclusive church. But even under his leadership, the Vatican has maintained a remarkable level of control over its own narrative, and much of the truth about its dealings remains obscured from public view. The truth, however, is that the Vatican is an institution that will continue to live in the shadows, shaping world events and religious discourse in ways that many will never fully comprehend. Its mysteries are not easily unraveled, and perhaps that is the very nature of its power. For as long as the Vatican remains a spiritual, cultural, and political juggernaut, the question of whether the Church is truly living up to its own moral teachings will continue to linger. In the end, it's not just about the facts we know, but the ones we may never discover, hidden away in its secret archives, in the hearts of its leaders, and within the walls of the Vatican itself. As the Vatican quietly governs its internal affairs, its grip on global power remains unshaken. The more we learn, the more we realize that there is always more to uncover. The final chapter of the Vatican's secrets is yet to be written, and it's possible that some of its darkest, most forbidden facts will remain hidden for generations to come. For now, we are left with the remnants of those who have sought to expose its hidden truths. Their efforts, whether successful or not, serve as a reminder that no institution, no matter how sacred, can remain free from scrutiny forever. The Vatican may be shrouded in secrecy, but it is also a symbol of the eternal human struggle for truth, power, and understanding. As we step away from the cloistered walls of this mysterious city-state, the questions will continue to echo in our minds. What other forbidden facts remain hidden within the Vatican's vaults? What are the untold stories that have been carefully crafted and protected? For now, the answers remain elusive, buried beneath centuries of tradition, secrecy, and power. The Vatican's legacy, for better or worse, is far from over, and as long as it endures, so too will the questions, the myths, and the mysteries surrounding it.